Okay, so we're waiting for two other people coming in the waiting room, and then that will be us. John, you wanted to talk a wee bit about some of the work that SCVO are doing at the moment and just how people can get involved and to let them know that kind of broader picture.
Yeah, of course. So as Ross said, we're running these calls twice a week, and they're either quite big general calls or topical ones like this one. These are called the DigiShift calls. They're always recorded. So just to remind you again, this is going to be recorded and we'll turn it into a podcast as well. This is part of the work we're doing with the Catalyst, which is a UK-wide initiative to support charities to make use of digital. And I just want to show you a couple of the other resources you can pick up. If you head over to the SCVO website, that's at scvo.org.uk, we've got a great support page there. So I'd recommend that you have a look at that and look through some in-depth articles we've gathered together to help you further along with your digital journey. If you're looking for the podcast episodes, that's called DigiListen. It's available on a very large range of podcast platforms, but you can choose that from anchor.fm/scvo-digital. And so it's really, please do make use of those resources. They're designed to take you a bit further along in your digital journey. And we also have a digital help service where you can book a quick call with us and we can talk through particular issues to try and help you move forward. I'll just paste the link to that resource page into the chat for the meeting. And as Ross says, we hope you'll join us in other calls as well, because we're covering quite a range of topics as we go forward.
Okay, so we've got one more person coming in from the waiting room and then we will get started. So we've got two speakers today. So we've got Jenny Snell from YouthLink Scotland, and we've got Marion Allison from the CLD Standards Council. There we go, Marion's giving a handy wave so everyone can see her. There she is. So what we're going to do is we're going to hear from each of the speakers. It's fairly informal. If you've been in these calls before, you'll know we don't have any slides or anything. They're going to talk a wee bit about digital service delivery in terms of their role and their space. And then we're going to open it up for questions, and then we're going to do something a bit more interactive to try and get some of the learning from the room. So some of the stuff that's going well for your organisation, and some of the stuff that's maybe not going so well as well. So we're going to first of all hear from Jenny Snell at YouthLink Scotland.
I was actually going to suggest that Marion goes first because she's going to start with the CLD stuff, and I'm more youth work, so it might be a bit
like behind the scenes collusion. I love this. This is good.
Is that all right, Marion?
Speakers are never this organised. This is amazing. You're like self-organising speakers. This is phenomenal. Right, cool. I'm happy with that. That works for me. Right, Marion, take it away.
Hello, everybody. I'm Marion Allison. Thank you very much for inviting me along. It's always really nice when you come along to a Zoom meeting and there's a lot of smiley faces coming back at you. So thank you very much for the kind of positive reinforcement early doors. So that's always good. I'm going to briefly outline 4 key areas. First of all, just kind of give an introduction to CLD. Then I'm going to tell you a wee bit about some of the positive things that are being fed back to us as the CLD Standards Council. Then talk about some of the challenges that we think are out there, and then kind of finally round up with what I kind of think might be the way forward, or some of the things we need to think about in the way forward. So as I said, my name is Marion Allison and I'm the Director of the CLD Standards Council. I'm also a member of the board at Impact Arts, which is an arts charity for young people. And I'm also on the board at Glasgow Kelvin College. So third sector, voluntary sector, very close to our heart in the CLD Standards Council, as we have many members who are indeed from the third sector and are volunteers. So basically, community learning and development in Scotland, as many of you will know, and I'm probably speaking to the converted here, is about youth work, it's about adult learning, it is about community development. And it's an education approach where basically you're working with and for people to design lots of interventions, everything from engaging humanitarian needs, particularly in the COVID crisis, right through to kind of various education programmes. So our job at the CLD Standards Council, we're the professional body for CLD practitioners. So anybody who's working and volunteering within community learning and development across youth work, adult learning, family learning, ESOL can join up. I will say it's free to join, so don't have that, oh my God, it's a pitch to get money out of me when you're already skint. It is free to actually join the Standards Council, and we can send down all the links of later on if you want to find out more. But one of the things that we thought in terms of the COVID challenge that we would do is to find out what it's actually like for practitioners, what's it like for our members. So we put out a survey and we've asked people to fill it in every month, and we've basically said what's working, what's not working, what are the challenges for you. So as you would expect, digital has been an absolutely huge part of the returns that we've received. What we're finding is that youth and community workers across Scotland are pretty much working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So people that are working with young people and families are working in the evenings, they're working in the weekends, as well as doing a lot of day shifts. So there is a huge workforce out there that's been extremely agile and been pretty much boots on the ground. Very much a blended learning approach. So where people have perhaps been shielding, are dealing with the COVID virus themselves, they've been working from home, as I'm sure many of we are, with the look at all the nice wallpaper, we're all working from home too. But there's still people out there delivering actual services. But today we're going to focus on the digital. So the things that people have kind of used digital for, the kind of high level things people are using digital for, and I hope this chimes with some of your experiences, is first of all about engagement. It's about your learners, about people that are using your services and just kind of saying hello, and befriending services, people just having that online chat, really informal, and just keeping your comms high with your people that are coming in through your doors usually. There's also a bit about entertainment, as any media function has. So I know you will all be scunnered with online quizzes, but that function of entertainment and music quizzes, whatever form that's taken, is really helping people to engage with their learners, with their young people, with adults, you know, so that kind of entertainment being really important. There's also information and advice, and this is where I would say across the third sector has been huge, where people have been cross-referencing to each other. So if your organisation isn't the key person to deal with, you know, medicine drop-off or food drop-off, people are signposting to each other. So if people are wanting to know if you're stuck, how to use Zoom, how to use Microsoft Teams, there's very much information, advice from the micro level right through to what's going on nationally. Education, we're seeing people using different types of programs to help deliver some of their Zoom classrooms, being one of the platforms that's been positive. Also Microsoft Teams, VScene, Google, I mean, the list is endless, and I have to say, I have got a limited knowledge. I'm just aware that we all use different platforms, and that might be something that we'll talk about later. Evaluation, as I said, we're putting a survey out there. I'm sure many of you are putting an evaluation out there. How are our services doing? And it's that kind of digital, using those digital platforms to do that. And key, partnership. How many people have liaised with new organisations over the last 3 months that we hadn't previously talked to because of a Twitter connection or a Facebook connection or something that we've wanted to follow up. The challenges are real, and that's everything from equipment. And there's almost two aspects to it. So there's something about young people, our learners, their ability to access equipment, but also us as practitioners, because every organisation has a different idea of who gets mobile phones, what version of, you know, Microsoft that you're using, and all the various issues. And that's sometimes about getting access to office furniture too. I mean, how many people are sitting at a proper desk just now, or are we actually just sitting on a sofa? So that chimes on as well as the kind of equipment. The costs that are associated with digital. So if you're a family and there's only one iPad in the house and it was bought 10 years ago and there's 5 people needing access to that one iPad, you know, where do you have the money at the moment to go in and access some of the actual physical hardware that's needed? Some of our members are telling us back about access to networks where 4G, 3G has been problematic, and actually in your own home as your router breaking down. I know certainly in our team some of the access problems have been problematic when computers decide just to shut down. There's also a challenge that if you're using digital, are you speaking to who you've always spoken to? So what about those learners and those practitioners who were always a bit wary of using digital? So how do we get to those people as we move forward? There's also an issue about confidence, and I'm hoping I'm not the only person in this Zoom chat who, when you're sitting in a kind of Zoom meeting such as this, that you're going, oh my goodness, I don't know how to press that button, or there's cats walking up across your keyboard, or children coming in. So all of those challenges that can affect your confidence, but that's us as a workforce, but also for learners. And as I said, there's something about that skills and knowledge, you know, so if you're already confident in using your way around keyboard, about using your way, how to use a mouse, how to get in and out of some of the chat rooms that are available, are providing some challenges for people's too. The biggest issue that we're getting back from members is about organisations' firewalls, and I'm sure on the chat there's already conversations about, so what one organisation allows people access to, another organisation doesn't. So how do we, as you know, a body of practitioners in the voluntary sector, how are we actually managing to engage with partners as well as with learners? It's particularly challenge for people that are working from home is that feeling of being on call 24 hours as your emails are pinging and that having to, oh my goodness, is it okay to walk away from this? So there's a level of anxiety that's hitting across the health and well-being. And it would be remiss of me in my role of the CLD Standards Council not to mention something about standards and ethics. Some of the challenges that people are telling us is that they're using their own mobile phones to contact learners and young people and service users where organisations haven't been able to do that. So that means giving out personal mobile numbers, and sometimes that can, you know, feel as though that it's encroaching upon your personal space, but also about that kind of ethical bit where in one hand your organisation's telling you don't share personal information with users, you know, service users, but on the other hand, if you want to carry on and engage with people, that's your only way around it. So these are some of the challenges that our members are coming back. And there's also that equality to access in terms of, you know, people having access to what is going on online. So in terms of next steps, I think there's something about having these kind of forums, keeping the conversations going between each other to share some of the opportunities and challenges that are happening. It's about sharing resources about what's working and about what's not working. And dare I say, patting each other in the back, as much as possible, trying to be collegiate and collaborative instead of being competitive, which can sometimes happen to all of us. Where possible, keep an eye on what funding bids are coming in, you know, and is there opportunity to work with other organisations, whether that's in your local space or whether that's in a national. Sometimes in the third sector, it's helpful to, I mean, I know everybody works in partnership anyway, but maybe thinking about perhaps some of the bigger organisations that might be able to help you put in joint bids for things. So that really involves horizon scanning for me, and again, using digital to horizon scan and checking out the various people that are on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, even whatever you know, platform works for you. And checking out what's going on with the national funding organisations, Cora, the Robertson Foundation. I'm sure I'm speaking to the converted here, where everybody's looking forward. So I suppose really my last word would be just about look beyond your boundaries and see how we can take it forward. So I'm hoping that helps, and I hope that leads nicely into what Jenny's going to say.
That's brilliant, Marion, thank you. So there's loads of stuff coming through the chat. We'll leave questions till we hear from Jenny, but do just put the questions into chat and Jen, me and John will try and pick them up as we go. So I'm going to hand over to Jenny Snell from YouthLink Scotland.
Yeah. Hi everyone. It's always a big task trying to follow Marion and talking, so I'm going to try my best, but here goes. I'm Jenny Snell, for those who don't know me already. I work for YouthLink Scotland, which, for those who don't know, is the National Youth Work Agency for Scotland. We are a membership organisation for both local authority and third sector youth work provisions. And my role at YouthLink is to lead on the I Will campaign, which focuses on youth social action. And I'm also covering the Learning for Sustainability remit at the moment, whilst my colleague's off on maternity. Before I started working at YouthLink, I worked in Aberdeen City Council with their youth work team, mostly youth work in schools, but also a little bit youth participation and centre-based youth work too. And it was in Aberdeen that I kind of started my journey towards CLD and being part of the kind of CLD community. So I did my postgrad diploma and then my master's as well after that. So I suppose that's just a bit of context on where I'm coming from today. So it's the strand of CLD that I'll be focusing on is mostly youth work, but hopefully with our kind of our shared values and ethics and competencies across the sector, it will be transferable for adult learning and community development as well. So kind of like Marion framed her kind of talk, I'm going to speak a little bit about youth work and kind of the successes that we've seen, the challenges that have came up, and then my kind of thoughts on what we can do going next. So in terms of shifting to a digital service delivery, YouthLink has been working on this for the best part of a decade already. So it's not just in response to the kind of COVID-19 pandemic, but my colleague Liz Green, who's off on maternity, has been kind of developing a huge range of resources and guidelines and workforce development around digital youth work to support practitioners to feel confident and equipped to take their kind of youth work practice to a digital model and continue empowering the young people and communities that we work with. So it's not a new thing for us, it's been kind of going on for a while. And the response by the youth work sector across Scotland to adapt to a digital delivery model has been it's been really incredible. We've seen numerous examples of youth work organisations quickly shifting over to digital platforms and undertaking the kind of activities that Marion's kind of already mentioned. So engaging with young people through quizzes and different online sessions, having meetings, comm staff. So like huge kind of success and moving to an online platform. And our local our youth work sector leader survey, that we conducted a few weeks ago, highlighted that 92% of youth work organisations had moved their services online. So quite a majority have managed to kind of adapt and flexibly move to digital means. That's not to say that there's not been like challenges with that though, and that there's still like challenges yet to overcome. So the youth work sector's leaders report also highlighted that 60% of local authority youth work provision are facing significant barriers in terms of digital access. So one of the key issues being what Marion already mentioned, like, you know, having access to the platforms that are being used by learners, by the young people, due to restrictions from IT departments, so Zoom, Facebook, Twitter. And some local authorities have managed to kind of negotiate around that, but it's kind of a work in progress. For both the voluntary sector and the local authorities, there's kind of concerns about the skills and the confidence of staff to engage in the digital world. So again, like Marion was saying earlier, there's that kind of lack of confidence. Like it can be quite overwhelming thinking about going online and how to adapt your kind of practice to that setting. And then huge concerns around the lack of access to appropriate digital equipment. Many staff in the youth work sector and volunteers are using personal equipment, so mobiles, laptops, etc., which when working with young people creates quite significant safeguarding issues. So that's something that kind of still needs to be worked on and overcome as well. And then I'm sure as the whole sector is aware, there's concerns about data poverty for young people and their ability to access services digitally, creating that sort of barrier to participation. But I suppose when we're thinking about those challenges and how we overcome them, the kind of key thing for me is that as a CLD practitioner, as a youth worker, shifting to digital CLD is quite a similar process that we would go through as practitioners in a community setting. As youth workers, one of our principles is we meet young people where they're at, and for me a digital space is just a place where young people are, and we kind of have that skill set to be able to meet them there. So My colleague Hilary, who's working on digital youth work just now as well, she refers to it as the ABC of digital youth work, which I really like. It's quite a simple and easy to remember model. So the A of digital youth work being the resources that you need. So just like you would think about organising and managing your resources in a community setting, doing the same for a digital setting. So what platform are you going to use? What do you need to know about the platform? What functionality does it have? What equipment do you need? So very much that what question, what do I need? And then the B being the process part of that. So just like you would go through the process in person, thinking about, is it going to be a group work session, a one-to-one session? What are the group dynamics going to be like? Are there barriers to learning? What engagement tools do I need? So it's more those kind of how are we going to do it questions. And then the C focusing more on that kind of risk and safeguarding aspect. So just going through the same process of risk assessment, which is a lot trickier on an online space because it's new and the risks are different, but I think the process and identifying and mitigating them is the same for us. So that's Hilary's ABC of digital youth work, which I really like. I think it's a nice way to look at it because like Marion already said, like going online, it can be quite overwhelming at the thought of shifting to digital platforms, but for me, I think we should be really confident in the skills and qualities that we have as youth workers, as adult educators, as CLD practitioners. Like our competencies and our skills and our qualities are all around flexibility, adaptability, overcoming barriers, navigating boundaries, challenging the status quo. That's our thing. That's what we do every single day out in communities, and we can absolutely own that as well on a digital space. We just kind of need the right tools and infrastructure to be able to do that. And so that kind of leads me on to a few resources that I just wanted to kind of point out that might be useful for some people. So we have the Digitally Agile principles, which were developed in partnership between YouthLink Scotland, Learning Link Scotland and the Scottish Community Development Centre. And they provide a national framework of guiding principles for the use of digital technology in social media and CLD. So looking at things from practice, policy, inclusion through to evaluation. So definitely we worth a look at them. And then more specifically for youth work, we have a digital youth work Padlet, which is a live resource, a collaborative resource as well. So the youth work sector coming together to continually build and add resources and share good practice. And that's on the YouthLink Scotland website and has everything from kind of good practice examples to activity ideas, safeguarding information and practical guidance on how to use platforms. My colleague Hilary also developed a specific digital youth work safeguarding checklist, which is a really good kind of resource to kind of think about process. And we have digital youth work webinars as well on specific topics and platforms, which have all been pre-recorded, so they can be watched on YouTube. There's one coming up in the next few weeks as well on digitally agile principles, so I would keep an eye out for that. And we have specific kind of digital youth work training sessions as well. So what on earth is digital youth work? I think I saw it earlier in the comments too. Is a training session that we've developed and is ongoing. So that's kind of it's specifically to youth work, but it's a really good way to kind of have those kind of reflective, collaborative conversations with colleagues across the sector. So just to finish off, I suppose, like I said earlier, the work that YouthLink's been doing around digital youth work's been going on for quite a long time. So even if youth work isn't the strand that you work in, there's lots of kind of transferable knowledge and tips and platform guidance that can be easily adapted over. And my final kind of point is a wee kind of a shameless sort of plug. I've been working as part of a small working group with the CLD Standards Council to develop informal meetup type sessions for practitioners to have those reflective conversations with colleagues from across the sector. And we never actually managed to get them face to face, so because COVID kind of happened. So we moved them very quickly to an online setting and had our first one 2 weeks ago on the topic of relationships, and we had over 60 participants kind of signed up, and it was a really great space to have those kind of much needed critical reflective conversations that we don't really get the space and the time to have in our daily kind of work schedules. So our next one is next Friday, and the topic is very relevantly digitally agile or digitally fragile. So it's just another opportunity for you to kind of come along and think about the kind of questions around that and discuss in kind of more detail as well. So hope to see some of you there too. And I think that's me.
Brilliant, thanks so much, Jenny. I've posted a link. I think Jen's been posting some links as well to all the Youth Link resources. We've also got a youth work section, the big Google document, which Jen posted up kind of early doors. So we gather up all the best practice from these calls, and that's been a kind of open source document since the start of COVID. Pretty much any sector that you work in, whether it's youth work or adult learning or mental health or counselling, there's usually anywhere from kind of 4 to 12 case studies under each of those headings in that document. So if you click through that Google Doc, you'll be able to go and grab some of those. I guess it's probably one of the biggest lessons is looking at what others in the sector are doing and trying to adapt some of that best practice rather than feeling that you have to sit down with a blank slate as a team and start everything from scratch. So there'll be some interesting, innovative stuff that's probably sitting in the room. We'll kind of tease some of that stuff out when we come to the discussion in the Q&A. But just keeping in mind that there'll be people across the country and globally in other parts of the UK doing really interesting things. What can you learn from them? How might you adapt that in the communities that you're working in? So I'm going to open up for questions. So if anyone's got a question, if you want to just stick your finger up and then Jen or me or John can kind of find you through the many Zoom windows. So does anyone want to ask a question for Jenny or Marion just now? Pat, do you want to jump in?
I just want to say, first of all, I've just joined as a member of CLD, and the conference is going to be my first venue to meet everyone. I've worked for 16 years designing personal development programs. This has been great today. And I'm volunteering for a charity at the minute in Edinburgh, making masks because I'm a sewer as well, and I'm a gardener, and I've been delivering tomato plants to an allotment. So I've moved my skills somewhere else, but thank you so much today. I just feel connected.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Pat. Thank you. That's all kind. Do you have any questions for Marion or Jenny in terms of what we heard today? Or?
I wondered, because I'm kind of new to a bit to digital, the program I've designed over 16 years with 1,000 people has been mainly face-to-face, supported by e-learning. But I just wonder, could you run personal development programs almost completely on a digital platform? I'm a trained mediator, so I work with the EQ, all those things, and I wonder, could you do that? I'd be really interested to know.
Jenny or Marion, either of you want to pick up on this, or do either of you know services that are running a service entirely digitally? Marion, do you want to jump in?
I would say, I think the short answer is yes, Pat, and I think there might be some learning to be gleaned from some of our colleagues at the colleges and universities, dare I say it, as they've been kind of looking towards putting some of their projects. I would say some of our colleagues that have been working in the ESOL area, particularly for CLD, have been putting on some fabulous adult learning programs, you know, that have been there from the beginning right through to the end. I know there's some really good practice going on in the North Lanarkshire area. I mean, I know it's all over the country, but that just springs to mind off the top of my head. So I guess I would say that Jenny's ABC is probably going to be helpful for you in terms of maybe thinking about what bits you can think, you know, what have you got the technology to take fully online. And I guess we were having that conversation across the Standards Council team this morning as we were looking at supervisor training programs. How do we do it all digitally, and how do we have that blended approach? So hope that helps a bit.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John Beaton, you've got your hand up. John's using the full functionality of Zoom rather than me with the very old school thing of asking you to put your fingers up. John's using it.
I was speaking to Ross about a wider project I'm involved in the other day, Theotector Lab, and I suppose it's a bit of a shout out because there's so much knowledge in the room, digital room, so to speak, digital space. I developed materials that I'd shared with Kirsty. I conducted a project for Inclusion Scotland to increase the civic participation of disabled people. The materials that I devised as part of the project were to create peer community connectors, so disabled people who were from that geographical area. There's 9 distinct areas in Highland culturally. So they would have the geographical identity and the identity of being a disabled person. And in that, being more able to empathise with people and then train them up to be competent CLD practitioners. Now, obviously with COVID, I'm going to have to turn these people to be digitally competent CLD practitioners. there's also the case that, you know, I've got to recognise in doing this that 56% of non-internet users are self-identified disabled people. And in terms of youth, it actually creates a bigger barrier, which you think it wouldn't, because disabled 16 to 24-year-olds, because of the socioeconomic disadvantage, are actually more likely to be not online. It goes at 64%, and they have the same digital access and usage as people who are 74 years and over. So there's a real idiom here about there's implications for youth work for disabled children and young people, and there's implications in the sense that, and I'll need partners to help me get disabled people online. I know Connecting Scotland's on the go, but it's not going to get all disabled people. We've also got people who've got long-term conditions who might not pre-COVID self-identified as a disabled person, but now will. I need the digital skills, which I've been talking to Ross about. I need access to digital devices. I need access to software. So there's those 4 barriers for disabled people, and obviously they're a significant part of that landscape. So basically it's a shout out. I'm going to be taking those materials and making it into a digital project, and here I am. So that's it, basically. So if anyone wants to contact me afterwards, I'll post my email and telephone number, and give me a shout, because that'd be good.
Yeah, and I'm sure, yeah, put it in the chat, because I'm sure there'll be loads of people interested. Actually, there's lots of people nodding along as you're speaking there. You know, you were wanting to come in with questions.
This one. There's 2 Unas here today.
Oh, is there? No way.
2 Una Pattersons. No, that's just a clear example, Ross, of my digital ineptitude, because I couldn't get on. So my lovely colleague forwarded me her link. So there's 2 Unas. I am actually Kerry. Lovely to meet you all.
Okay. Masquerading, I like it.
Kerry, would you like us to rename you? We can do that.
Okay, I'll try that. Okay. Just to say, you know, I am not particularly confident when it comes to online dealings. I am definitely a pre-1980s baby, so I'm a digital immigrant as opposed to native. But yesterday, and I'm taking my projects online, I am supporting young people to volunteer online. They traditionally volunteered in a number of different projects, from after school clubs to gardens. But we're going online, and I have to embrace this. And I thought what was really, really interesting, if people haven't seen it, is the risk assessment centered on digital youth work, which talks about the risks of not going online. And that just was mind-blowing for me. So I'm kind of plugging the training. If there's anybody else in this meeting that's a bit like me, a bit nervous about the whole thing, we covered yesterday in the digital, what is digital youth work anyway? Things like digital rights, stuff that I had never considered. What are the rights of young people online? You know, again, risk assessments, the pros and cons of different platforms. We did a wee Dragon's Den scenario about what platforms to choose. And I learned a lot about Instagram and, you know, and Twitter and, and Discord that I'd never heard of. So it was really confidence giving, and I also got a safeguarding checklist. So yeah, if anybody's not done that, I would just say, starting out, do it.
Yeah, that's, you know, it's a really, really good, simple way of particularly your board getting their head around what digital means and actually putting that question back to them, because I know a lot of them, when I speak to people in the CLD sector, can be quite risk averse. And actually, what is the risk of us not doing this, and how are we leaving people behind because we don't do this? So seeing this very much as an accessibility issue. And for me, I think one of the things that's happened over the last month or so is that that kind of immediate brick wall of digital inclusion has come down slightly, and we're having much more nuanced discussions about what digital inclusion means and what that looks like. So it's not to ignore that there's still a huge chunk of society that don't have data, don't have the skills, and don't have devices. But how do we do something meaningful to support those people rather than just looking at it as an excuse to simply not deliver any services digitally? I think there's been huge change over the last month or so.
Yep.
So that's a really good point, Kerry. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, any other questions or points from the room? There's usually someone on like page 3 of Zoom that I can't see who's probably got their hand up and had it up the whole time, and I've just not spotted them. Could it be the second Una Patterson that's got her hand up? Who knows? Oh no, Erin, you are on the 4th page. That's why I don't see people on this page. Erin, do you want to jump in?
Sorry, I had also unmuted because I hadn't had my lunch yet when this started. So I was like, hey, getting down a sausage sandwich, which would not have been attractive for anyone on the call. I just wanted to ask, and thank you to Marion and Jenny and everyone who's been sharing really interesting links, like so much to take in. I wanted to ask you this, is there anything that's particularly stood out to you that you've gone on to a platform that we might be very familiar with, or a platform that's quite new and you thought, gosh, that's really creative and really innovative, and I'm quite impressed by that, and you think maybe some of us would like to take something like that on ourselves and get a little bit creative with our applications at the moment?
So actually on one of these calls, somebody used a platform called Prezi Videos, which I'm hope I'm getting that right, Ross, you might be actually better saying this than me, and it was mind-blowing. Like I thought it was fantastic, so definitely check that out as a kind of cool resource. The other thing that I recently found out when I was doing stuff through a Volunteer with 2050 climate group, and we moved our kind of modules online, and young friends of theirs did a session for us, and they used like a kind of Google Doc in the back, it was Google Slides in the background, and they had post-it notes, and I just thought that was amazing. It was such a kind of good idea of what we would normally do in a kind of youth work or a community setting, have post-it notes everywhere and people kind of sharing ideas and collaborative stuff. And I never had that kind of foresight, I suppose, in thinking of how I could do that on a digital space until I saw it in practice, and actually using Google Slides and having everybody collaborating and kind of moving post-it notes across everything was like it was really cool. So that's another thing. And then I'm a big kind of fan of Instagram stories, so I do a lot of work with young people, supporting them to take over Instagram stories and have that ownership of that space as well. There's a webinar, actually, I did a webinar for YouthLink a few weeks ago, and that's on the YouTube page as well. If anybody's interested in that further, they can go and find out how to go through a kind of youth work approach to Instagram stories. Is that helpful, Erin?
That's amazing. Thank you very much, Jenny.
Marion, do you have
I
anything
would
to add?
also say, I know it's a bit kind of passé, but I've actually seen some really good professional dialogue on Twitter. So from the college sector, one of the journalists that writes for TESS, every Thursday night at 9 o'clock, she'll literally host right, what do you think? What are the big things that are driving forward? So people are literally having that conversation about how do you squeeze your lunch in while you're trying to take part. So I've actually seen some really good stuff on Twitter that's been really open, and interestingly enough, I think some of the early years colleagues in early years are using Twitter to actually have their kind of conversations like this, their big blathers. So again, that's really quite open, which I was surprised that you know, there wasn't that kind of, oh my goodness, everybody will be able to see your homework kind of thing. But I mean, Twitter, I know it's a bit basic, but I've certainly found some interesting stuff there that's been of good use.
Yeah, I think you're right, Marion. Like, I think people are getting quite creative with Twitter, and you know, it's kind of nice actually, because for so long Twitter just seems to be like we just shout things out into the ether, and to see you saying that people are actually having dialogue and two-way conversation on Twitter is, I think, maybe kind of what it was really originally meant to be about, and that sounds quite healthy, at least in those circles. Thank you.
Absolutely. Right, John, you want to jump back in?
I was just thinking about people's.
Oh, there's two Johns. Sorry, I've confused
sorry.
It's just John Beaton had his hand up.
All right, it's just a quick one for people that are going to be doing funding applications. The No One Left Behind initiative obviously comes from the Sustainable Development Goals pledge to leave no one behind, which means going to people experiencing the highest level of inequality first in terms of reducing inequalities and improving outcomes in our communities. If you go on to, post you the link, there's a Sustainable Development Goals GitHub, which has got open data, and you can actually interrogate it by local authority area. So if you're putting in a localized bid somewhere and you want to point to the level of digital exclusion by protected characteristics, say you're working with a particular community of interest, you can do all that, and the data is as live as the last 3 months. So I'll post you a link on.
That's brilliant.
It might help support people's funding bids. There's all sorts of other things in there about the Sustainable Development Goals that you can use. And of course, in terms of using a rights-based approach, much like community learning development is encapsulated by a human rights-based approach, the Sustainable Development Goals were drafted by using human rights and the progressive human rights acts, including the UN CRPD. So they're all about rights. So I'll send you that on, and hopefully it helps support
That's
your
really
bid.
useful. Yeah, that's really good. Thanks, John. Other John, did you want to come in as well?
I was just going to say really quickly that Zoom actually has a built-in whiteboard feature. I'll just quickly demo it. So you find it by going to share screen and then whiteboard, and then you can just draw text. And participants can join in or not, depending on what you want to do. So it's quite useful if you wanted to just keep it simple, because it's right there in the package as well. So that's just a quick one if you had a group where you didn't want them having to juggle two tools at once. And I've used it before where you can actually set up some boards beforehand. So if you had a few things you wanted to work through, you could get them ready and then say, right, we're now going to look at the whiteboard. So that's quite a useful little tip.
Yeah, that's really useful. Yeah, I've put a link as well, the one that Jenny mentioned. So Jamboard is the Google tool. So it's basically like a Google Doc, but it's got all the kind of post-its and stuff built in. It's really simple. If you want to get a bit more advanced, Miro works really well. So Miro, you can use that in collaboration. One of the things I've seen that works really nicely is if you're looking to get feedback on something. So it literally could be like feedback on a flyer or a social media campaign, and you want to get a group of young people involved in it, you can do what John's described, have it up on the screen because you've done share screen, and then they can annotate, so they can circle and say, actually, I don't like the way that you've used this image, young people, because it's actually quite negative, or this text is too small and it's not accessible, and people can annotate that stuff in real time, which is really nice. So there's loads of ways of being creative. We're going to do something just now that is not as creative as that and is a bit more old school. But we're going to do, I'm going to ask two questions. So first of all, I want you to all share something that's been working not so well in your organisation, and then something that has been working well in terms of digital service delivery. And what we're going to do, yeah, on you go, John.
Can I suggest one idea we've tried before is if you start typing but don't hit enter until Ross says go, because what that'll mean is then you won't be trying to read at the same time as you're writing your own answer. So just take a minute and write your own answer, but don't hit enter until Ross gives
some
you the
kind
word.
of signal. I'll wave a flag or something. So I'm going to steal, Jenny, how did you, it's something that's digitally fragile and something that's digitally agile. So I like that. I'm stealing it. It's not yours anymore. I've just stolen it. So the first thing is going to be something that is digitally fragile. So something where there's still a big issue in your organisation around digital, and it could be about staff confidence, it could be about using a certain tool, it could be about not being able to reach certain users, or maybe you tried something and it was a disaster. So as John said, type that up in the chat box, and then in about a minute's time, I'm going to ask you all to hit enter at the same time. So we're on the fragile first of all, and then we'll come on to the agile. So what's the thing that's not gone so well? Okay, and then I'm going to ask you to hit enter, and we'll see what they all come through with. Okay, right. I want you to all hit enter just now. What is digitally fragile? Oh, they're all flooding in. Love it. Look at this. Okay. Someone is unmuted and has very nice bird noises in the background. It's lovely and peaceful. Don't know who you are. I'm not going to tell you to mute. That's all right. That's nice. I quite like it. Okay. Okay. John or Jen, anything that stood out there in terms of digitally fragile?
I think an issue I'm seeing a bit is working with different partners can mean certain platforms aren't possible or available.
Yeah.
And then I think another one was a bit related to that is the workload involved if you've prepared for one platform but have to shift. That can be a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, risk assessments come up a couple of times in there as well. So this is a big area where a lot of people have kind of jumped in at the deep end with digital. That doesn't mean you jump in at the deep end and don't take risk assessments and don't think about safeguarding some of the children and adults and families that you're working with. So that some of the resources that Jenny and Marion mentioned, but also the Google Doc which we shared, has a specific safeguarding privacy and risk assessment section in it. So if you scroll down at the bottom of the document, if you go into the kind of contents, you'll see there's a safety and privacy issues tab, and when you click on that, it will take you to loads of safeguarding tools. Some of them are open source, you can just take them and adapt them for your own organisation, but getting that stuff right is really important. And what I thought, while we're on the fragile, I'm going to launch a very quick poll just to quickly ask you, for the organisations who've been told that you cannot use Zoom, so only take part in this poll if you've been explicitly told you cannot use Zoom. I'd be interested to know who is it that told you you can't use Zoom. So I'm quite interested in this one. So there should be a poll for everyone that's popped up for you all just now. Has everyone got that? You should be able to vote. So only vote if you've been told explicitly you cannot use Zoom. So a lot of the conversations I've been having with CLD professionals, this seems to come up time and time again at the moment. Okay. Okay, so mainly the local authorities, so 71% your local authority is telling you can't use Zoom. Nobody so far has been told by their funder they can't use Zoom, which is interesting. 30-ish% have been told by their manager that they cannot use Zoom. Okay, interesting. Okay, right, I'll give you another couple of seconds. Right, so it's around about a 70-30 split. So 70% of people have been told by local authorities that they cannot use Zoom, and 30% been told by their managers. Okay, just out of interest, anyone want to kind of jump on and maybe share kind of how explicitly you've been told not to use it, or for a lot of you, has it simply been advice? Is anyone comfortable sharing that? Okay, Susan.
Hi, we've all got council laptops, and we're explicitly told that we're not allowed to download Zoom.
Okay.
We're not actually supposed to engage with Zoom at all, but obviously if we do it in our browsers.
Okay, so for those of you who haven't seen, so Zoom 5.0 just got released, which has encryption and a lot more security features. They've made a huge number of changes over the last month. There's a really good blog post written by Alison Stone, SCVO, so we'll hopefully get a link to that in the chat, which gives you some of the kind of broader issues, because actually a lot of the issues that we saw with Zoom earlier on were around human error. So things like Zoom bombing, when you are posting a live link to a Zoom meeting and anyone can access it, the issue there isn't with Zoom, the issue would be with any platform where there's a live link and you've posted that publicly. So for me, a big key part of that understanding of privacy and security is really thinking about the difference between something that is human intervention or human error versus something that is technically not secure about the platform. But do, if you are using Zoom, upgrade to Zoom 5.0, but there's been a huge number of changes. Okay, right, so what we're going to do now, because we've not got a huge amount of time left, we're going to go a bit more positive this time, so digitally agile this time. So what have you been doing that's been a success? And that could be a success in your staff team or your volunteer team, or it could be a success with the learners that you're working with, or maybe something you've teamed up with another organisation on. So again, just type it in, don't press return yet, and then I'll tell you when to press return and we'll see them all coming in. So what has been your digitally agile success? Jenny is never going to come on another call, because I'll just steal all the stuff that she's come up with again.
It wasn't mine to steal, it was
the
Standards Council.
Oh, is it? Right, you stole it off Marion.
Kirsty and Marion
Shocking.
can just nab it back.
It's terrible. Okay, so just before I ask you to press enter, there's a few questions came in, just say where are the links going to go. And we take all those links, well, I say we, Jenny takes all the links that are useful and puts them in that Google Doc, which the link is in the chat. So all you need to do is open up the Google Doc. You can either bookmark it if you've got a Google Drive or a Gmail account, you can just save it in there, or you can even download it if you want the current copy as it stands. But that's where we put all the links that we've got. Okay, right, everyone want to press return if you've not done it yet. We'll see what you come up with. Right, God, there's loads flooding through. Okay. Okay, it's some interesting ones there actually about, and we've not covered this a huge amount yet, but actually trying to engage learners and consulting with learners rather than just feeling like a lot of this stuff is maybe done behind closed doors in a staff team and then it's done to learners, is that fundamental starting point of understanding how are people living their lives, what do they need from you. I think for me that's never been more important, because that huge shift in what your services are looking like, but actually for a lot of people you're working with where their day-to-day life, their workload now sits in the same household, where there's kids trying to learn things, where they don't have access to school, and how does CLD fit within that lifestyle and that space? And there's a bit of a fundamental shift there in terms of what that looks like. Okay, John or Jen, any that stand out for you in those digitally agile examples?
And I think I was just struck by people being encouraged by the confidence and trying things, and maybe connecting with people that they hadn't reached before, or actually also connecting with colleagues they'd not reached before. Because I think often in a physical office, yes, you got direct access to people that work in your building, but you maybe have other team members you're not so in touch with. So that's been a benefit.
Yeah, lots coming in actually about online wellbeing sessions. So Sove's mentioned that one. So I think, yeah, just thinking about this, not just purely as traditional learning, but actually thinking about things like wellbeing. Marion mentioned that we're maybe all sick of quizzes, but there's a whole broad range of nice things that we can do online as well. Okay. Does anyone feel comfortable coming on and sharing maybe something that they've done, so a new move you've made to digital service delivery that's been a success with the learners that you're working with? Anyone happy sharing one of their successes? So you can either use the digital put your hand up, or if you stick your hand up, I'll find you. Sophie, do you want to come and talk a wee bit about what you've been doing?
Yeah, sure. We're a relatively new programme of community link workers in Glasgow, working in deprived communities based out the GP practices. So obviously at the very earliest stages, our staff were removed from GP practices, and we had to rethink what we were doing in terms of both our one-to-one work and our group work. So for group work, we have developed a series of online wellbeing sessions which are interactive, and we've had to design the content and the interactiveness of them and skill up staff really quickly to feel confident to deliver them. So it's actually worked really, really well. We've been amazed at how on board staff have got from the earliest stages. The challenge remains so we've got the product, if you like. The challenge for us is around working within the communities that we are, making sure that there's a degree of equality of access to this online resource, that people have got devices and data, and that remains a challenge to bring people on with that, and also to tackle the people's own confidence and willingness to engage in an online platform. But we're definitely making progress there, and we see this now as something that will remain part of our provision regardless of wherever the next steps take us, and that we will always be able to have an online programme. So much like what you were saying, a couple of the speakers were saying, that online will remain after this.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else want to jump in? We've still got a few more minutes left before we need to finish up. Okay. Does everyone want their lunch? Not lunch. I'm losing track of time. It's 3 o'clock. I did this. I came in the call and I was like, it's 12 o'clock, and it wasn't. It was 2 o'clock.
I think Pat wanted to come in with a question.
Oh, Pat, I'll unmute you. Give me a second. There you go. Oh no.
Sorry, Pat, you're still muted.
You're still muted. I think I'm clicking you, unmute, and then you're.
Can you hear?
There we go. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
I'm in a situation where I'm in lockdown because of age, and I work with people in their workplaces. So I do some e-coaching. We both fix the agendas, and I send out a monthly e-newsletter that other people contribute to as well. So, and I'm improving my digital skills at the same time.
Yeah, I think, actually a lot of the best examples are working where it's something like Zoom or a video platform where it feels that sense of connectedness and community, but it sits alongside something else. So that's sitting alongside, someone taking the time to submit a document to you or read your newsletter, but that actually works well alongside this. So thinking about where a myriad tools are going to work with each other can be really useful. Okay. John, anything else you want to pick up on in terms of some of the wider work that's going on with SCVO at the moment, and where people can tie in with that?
Yeah, so maybe just before I do that, a couple of quick thoughts. So one was on the question of Zoom and different platforms. I think one of the biggest questions is really think about what kind of meeting or activity you're running. We're running this as a Zoom meeting, so everyone can speak and everyone can be seen. That's because our community has said, this is the way we like to run our calls. Some other models are like a Zoom webinar or a Teams live event where it's a bit more of a presenter versus audience kind of situation. That can bring pluses in terms of it's a bit of an easier one to manage and moderate, but it can feel a lot less interactive. And I think my other quick thought would be when people are talking about the challenge of preparing for different platforms, I think if you take a bit of time to just get familiar with each one, and also if you're preparing a basic slide deck, that's probably something you can share on any platform just by screen sharing. So to some extent, you can pull together a core of content that you could then use on a few different platforms. So you might find that if one partner is fine with Zoom, that would be easy to do if that's what you're already familiar with, but you may then be able to move materials across with a little bit of modification. That could be a way of enabling you to reach different audiences. Just on the wider context then, one thing that's probably worth highlighting is that we're obviously working very closely with Third Sector Lab, and there'll be some training coming up through the summer and into the autumn. So initially, it's primarily focused at organizations that are supported by a few different funders. So there's a kind of core group that will get the first training sessions, but the plan is to expand that, and these will be kind of 90-minute sessions covering a wide range of the topics we've been talking about, and we'll be publicizing those through our Twitter feed, which is at SCVO Tweets, and also Third Sector Lab will be doing the same. And do just keep an eye on our website, because any events that are coming up will be listed there. And at the moment, the vast majority of them are free and open for any organization to join. So do take that chance if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we're, in terms of the 90-minute workshops, as John said, so we're programming those in the moment. So Jen's unenviable task at the moment is, I can see in her face, she's loving the task, which is chasing up lots of trainers to get titles and blurbs and everything else that we need from people, then program that stuff in. So so they'll all be available online. They'll be 90 minutes each, and we've got a huge range of kind of topics. So service design, using data as a decision-making tool, social media strategy, video content. So there's quite a wide range of things coming up, and they'll be free to attend, which is great. So we'll get that info out soon. We're at 3 o'clock, so I just wanted to say thank you very much to Jenny Snell and to Dr. Marion Allison for speaking. That's been amazing, really useful, so useful. The first set of speakers as well, who have gone away and decided what they're going to talk about between themselves, and that has proven very beneficial. It's not what you usually get, which is like 2 minutes before the call and someone comes on and goes, yeah, I know I spoke to you last week, but what do you want me to talk about again? So this is like a nice thing. This is good. This is like CLD all over. That's amazing. Super. Cool. The video from this will go on the SCVO YouTube channel and also on the Third Sector Lab Facebook page. Is there going to be a podcast of this one as well, John? Do you know?
That's a good question. We'll certainly have the recording. We'll check with the podcast team how they're fixed. So a team help us do the podcast. So we'll just see how quickly they can do that. But whatever happens, there'll be a recording of this you can access. I think somebody else has asked about contact details sharing. We'll have a think about that, because what we're not able to do is just kind of broadcast everyone's details out there into the ether, because obviously that's got massive GDPR implications. But if you would like some sharing, we'll find a way of doing that somehow or other. Yeah, because we do have your emails, because we've done that to run the call. Yeah, and just to reiterate, I know, I mean, for most of you it'll be quite obvious, but just that CLD community on Twitter that is growing all the time and is really strong, and there's just so many resources coming out from lots of people there. So if you do have any questions, I would go and urge you to kind of take part in that. Great, thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully it's sunny where you are as well. Thank you. We'll catch you all later. Cheers. Thank you.
See you later. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.